Frankenstein is a 2025 American Gothic science fiction horror drama film produced, written, and directed by Guillermo del Toro, based on the 1818 novel by Mary Shelley. The film stars Oscar Isaac as Victor Frankenstein and Jacob Elordi as the creature, with Mia Goth and Christoph Waltz in supporting roles. The story follows the life of Frankenstein, an egotistical scientist whose experiment in creating new life results in dangerous consequences. Del Toro had long imagined a faithful Frankenstein film as a dream project. This was initially in development for Universal Pictures, with Del Toro casting frequent collaborator Doug Jones as the creature and Bernie Wrightson being considered for the monster's design. However, Universal suspended the project in relation to its planned Dark Universe franchise. Netflix revived the project in 2023, with Elordi instead portraying the creature. Filming took place from February to September 2024. Wrightson had died in 2017, and the illustrated compilation Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein was a key inspiration for the film's look. Frankenstein premiered at the 82nd Venice International Film Festival on August 30, 2025. The film was released on Netflix. It had a limited theatrical release in the United States from October 17 and was globally released on November 7 on Netflix. The film received generally positive reviews from critics. Both the National Board of Review and the American Film Institute named it as one of the top 10 films of 2025. It received 5 nominations at the 83rd Golden Globe Awards, including Best Motion Picture, Drama, and Best Supporting Actor. Motion Picture for Elordi. Plot. This article's plot summary may be too long or excessively detailed. Please help improve it by removing unnecessary details and making it more concise. December 2025. Learn how and when to remove this message. Prelude. In 1857, the Horisont, a Royal Danish Navy ship sailing for the North Pole, is trapped in the ice. Alerted to an explosion in the distance, Captain Anderson and his men discover a gravely injured Victor Frankenstein. Upon bringing him aboard, the crew are attacked by a creature who demands Victor's surrender. Captain Anderson uses a blunderbuss to sink the creature into the icy water. Victor explains that he is the creature's maker and recounts its creation. Part 1. Victor's Tale. Victor's mother dies, giving birth to his younger brother William, who becomes the favorite of their aristocratic father, a renowned surgeon. Grieving his mother and hardened by his father's abuse, Victor becomes a brilliant but arrogant surgeon, obsessed with curing death through science. In 1855, Victor is expelled from the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh for reanimating corpses, which a disciplinary tribunal denounces as sacrilege. Arms merchant Henrik Harlanda offers Victor unlimited funding and an isolated tower to continue his experiments. Enlisting William's assistance in building his laboratory, Victor becomes smitten with William's fiancée Elizabeth, Harlanda's niece, who declines his advances. When an impatient Harlanda demands results, Victor harvests body parts from hanged criminals and soldiers killed in the ongoing Crimean War. He fashions a large creature to reanimate, preparing to harness lightning to send electric currents through the lymphatic system. As a storm approaches, Harlanda reveals he is dying of syphilis and demands his brain be put into the creature. Victor refuses, and Harlanda falls to his death attempting to sabotage the experiment. Victor electrifies the creature, but it seemingly fails to reanimate. The following morning, Victor finds the creature alive. Chaining it in the cellar, he marvels at the creature's immense strength and rapid healing, but can only teach it to speak one word: Victor. Frustrated, Victor imitates his father's cruel discipline, enraging the creature. Arriving with William, Elizabeth questions Victor's treatment and bonds with the creature, teaching him to speak her name. Victor lies to William that the creature killed Harlanda and sends them away, setting fire to his lab with the creature inside. Hearing the creature cry out his name, Victor has a change of heart and attempts to re-enter the tower, but it explodes, grievously wounding his leg. As Victor tells his story, the creature boards the ship, confronts the captain, and reveals his side of the story. Part 2. The Creature's Tale. The creature breaks his chains and escapes the explosion. Wandering the woods, he is shot at by hunters and later takes shelter in the mill gears of their farm. Observing the family through the walls, the creature grows attached and secretly helps the family by providing them with large supplies of firewood and building a pen for their sheep. The family thank their unseen benefactor as the spirit of the forest. When the rest of the family leaves for the winter, the creature befriends their blind patriarch, who teaches him to read and speak fluently. Struggling to remember his past, the creature journeys to the ruins of the laboratory and discovers the truth about his creation and the address to Victor's estate. He returns to the farm to find the blind man being attacked by wolves. The creature fights them off and comforts his dying friend. The hunters return and, mistaking the creature for the blind man's killer, shoot him dead, though he later revives. Realizing he cannot die and will spend eternity alone, the creature confronts Victor on the night of William and Elizabeth's wedding, asking he create a companion for him. Victor, fearing the possibility of the creature reproducing, adamantly refuses, and the creature attacks him. Overhearing the commotion, Elizabeth arrives and embraces the creature upon seeing him. Victor attempts to shoot the creature, but inadvertently shoots Elizabeth instead. William attempts to rush the creature but is mortally wounded. As he dies, he calls Victor the true monster. The creature carries Elizabeth to a cave where she dies. Victor pursues the creature to the Arctic. In a confrontation, the creature attempts to destroy himself with a stick of dynamite but fails. A remorseful Victor and the creature reconcile, addressing each other as father and son, before Victor succumbs to his injuries. The creature uses his strength to free the ship from the ice. Captain Anderson decides to abandon his own reckless pursuit and sail back homeward. Alone, the creature reaches out to embrace the sunlight as Victor once taught him. Cast: Oscar Isaac as Baron Victor Frankenstein, a surgeon who plans to create life from death. Christian Convery as young Victor. Jacob Elordi as the creature, a monstrous creation of Victor Frankenstein. Mia Goth as Lady Elizabeth Harlanda, William's fiancée, for whom Victor has feelings. Baroness Claire Frankenstein, Victor's late mother, who died giving birth to William. Felix Kammerer as William Frankenstein, Victor's younger brother and Elizabeth's fiancé. David Broadley as the blind man, a blind old man who befriends the creature. Lars Mikkelsen as Captain Anderson, the head of a Royal Danish Navy expedition to the North Pole. Charles Dance as Baron Leopold Frankenstein, Victor's strict, oppressive father and a renowned physician. Christoph Waltz as Henrik Harlanda, 6, Elizabeth's uncle and a wealthy arms manufacturer who funds Victor's experiments. Carl Gatehouse as the young hunter, the unnamed son of the blind man. Lauren Collins as Alma, the young hunter's wife. Sophia Galasso as Anna Maria, the granddaughter of the blind man and the daughter of the young hunter. Ralph Inessen as Professor Krenth, 7, a professor who oversees the hearing of Victor. Bern Gorman as an executioner from whom Victor obtains the remains of deceased criminals. Nikolai Lykos as Chief Officer Larson, who attempts to persuade Captain Anderson of the crew's fading strength and morale. Production. Development. In 2007, Guillermo del Toro said that a project that he would kill to make would be a faithful Miltonian tragedy version of Mary Shelley's 1818 novel Frankenstein, citing Frank Darabont's Pretty Much Perfect script for Kenneth Branagh's 1994 film Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. 8. In January 2008, he revealed that he was then in the process of crafting drawings that he hoped to use as a basis for the world of the film, and that, additionally, he had begun taking script notes, but stopped once the WGA strike occurred. 9. The following month, Del Toro said of his vision, "What I'm trying to do is take the myth and do something with it, but combining elements of Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein without making it just a classical myth of the monster. The best moments in my mind of Frankenstein, of the novel, are yet to be filmed. The only guy that has ever nailed for me the emptiness, not the tragic, not the Miltonian dimension of the monster. But the emptiness is Christopher Lee in the Hammer films, where he really looks like something obscenely alive. Boris Karloff has the tragedy element nailed down, but there are so many versions, including that great screenplay by Frank Darabont that was ultimately not really filmed. 10-11. Later that year, in September, the film was set up through Del Toro's 3-year first-look picture deal at Universal Pictures. Alongside a slate of films he was announced to direct, including Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Slaughterhouse-Five and Drud. 12. Del Toro cited Bernie Wrightson's 1983 Frankenstein illustrations as inspiration, and said the film would not be a direct adaptation of Shelley's novel, but rather an adventure story that involves the creature. 13-14. Del Toro wanted Wrightson to design his version of the creature. 15. In 2009, Del Toro stated that production on Frankenstein was not likely to begin for at least 4 years. 16. Despite this, he had already cast frequent collaborator Doug Jones in the role of the creature and begun initiating makeup tests with the actor. 17-18. Jones later commented that the project was shelved due to Universal's future plans for their Dark Universe franchise. 19. At Comic-Con 2010, Del Toro told Collider that the story was his favorite novel in the world. 20. In 2013, Del Toro expressed public interest in casting Benedict Cumberbatch for the role of the creature. 21. In 2014, Del Toro said that he would like to do versions of both Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, and that Universal chairperson Donna Langley had approached him several times about getting it going, but that he was reluctant to do so because it is his dream project. 22. In 2016, Del Toro said of his efforts to make the film, "Frankenstein to me is the pinnacle of everything, and part of me wants to do a version of it. Part of me has for more than 25 years chickened out of making it. I dream I can make the greatest Frankenstein ever, but then if you make it, you've made it. Whether it's great or not, it's done. You cannot dream about it anymore. That's the tragedy of a filmmaker. You landed a 10 or you landed a 6.5, but you are at the Olympics already, and you are judged." 23. In 2020, in an interview promoting the film Antlers 2021, Del Toro stated that if he had the funding, he would make an adaptation of Frankenstein that would span 2 to 3 films due to the book's complexity and changing points of view. 24. In 2023, the project was revived by Netflix, with whom Del Toro had signed a multi-year deal to produce projects. Following the win of Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio 2022, at the 95th Academy Awards for Best Animated Feature, Variety revealed that he was set to write and direct the feature with Andrew Garfield, Oscar Isaac and Mia Goth in early talks for potential roles. 25. In September, Del Toro revealed that filming was scheduled to commence in February 2024, and that Christoph Waltz had been added to the cast. 26. In January, Jacob Elordi replaced Garfield for the role of the creature, due to scheduling conflicts that had resulted from the SAG-AFTRA strikes. 27-28. Elordi was recommended to Del Toro by a hairstylist who worked with Elordi on Priscilla 2023, previously on the set of Priscilla. Elordi had joked about having been cast in Frankenstein. 29. Del Toro had spent 9 months designing the look of Garfield's creature, but they were scrapped when he departed, leaving only 9 weeks for him to redesign the look for the taller Elordi. 30. Felix Kammerer, Lars Mikkelsen, David Bradley, Christian Convery, and Charles Dance joined the cast in undisclosed roles. Dance previously portrayed the father of Frankenstein in the 2015 film Victor Frankenstein. 28-31. In April 2024, Del Toro announced Ralph Ineson had been cast in the film in a pivotal cameo appearance. 32. Del Toro explained about taking his own approach to this adaptation. "What I find beautiful is that when you create a universal myth, whether it's Frankenstein, Pinocchio, Dracula, or Sherlock Holmes, the myth itself rises so far above the original material that any interpretation is equally faithful if done with sincerity, power, and personality. If you think in terms of fidelity to the canon, you would be completely paralyzed." 33. Filming. Principal photography began on February 12, 2024, in Toronto, and concluded on September 30, 31-34. Additional filming took place at the Royal Mile in Edinburgh, Hospital Field House in Arbroath, Angus, and Burley House in Stamford, Lincolnshire in September 2024. 35, 36. Del Toro stated that it would not be a horror film, but an incredibly emotional story. 37. Oscar Isaac, who plays the lead character of Frankenstein, says the film is this very European story, but told through a very Latin American, Mexican, Catholic point of view. So, it was just high passion all the time. 38. Music. Main article, Frankenstein, soundtrack. In January 2025, Alexandre Desplat was revealed to have composed the musical score, having previously worked with Del Toro on The Shape of Water, 2017, and Pinocchio, 2022. 39. In a May 2025 interview, Desplat said, "Guillermo's cinema is very lyrical, and my music is rather lyrical too. So I think the music of Frankenstein will be something very lyrical and emotional. I'm not trying to write horrific music." 37. Influences. Del Toro said of his inspiration for making the movie, "It was a religion for me. Since I was a kid, I was raised very Catholic. I never quite understood the saints. And then when I saw Boris Karloff on the screen, I understood what a saint or a messiah looked like. So I've been following the creature since I was a kid, and I always waited for the movie to be done in the right conditions, both creatively in terms of achieving the scope that it needed for me to make it different, to make it at a scale that you could reconstruct the whole world." 40. Del Toro acknowledged James Whale's 1931 adaptation as a formative influence, and his version draws also from its 1935 sequel Bride of Frankenstein. 41. Del Toro also cited Rebecca, 1940, by Alfred Hitchcock, Wuthering Heights, 1939, by William Wyler, Dragonwyck, 1946, by Joseph L. Minkiewicz, and Uncle Silas, 1947, by Charles Frank among his cinematic inspirations and influences. 42. During a Netflix event in Los Angeles, the first footage from the film was scored to Polish composer Wojciech Killer's score for Francis Ford Coppola's 1992 film Bram Stoker's Dracula. 43. Release. Frankenstein landed its world premiere in the main competition of the 82nd Venice International Film Festival on August 30, 2025. 44. For its North American premiere, Frankenstein made it to the Special Presentations program of the Toronto International Film Festival. 45, where it was screened on September 8, 2025. 46. It was also presented in the gala presentation at the 30th Busan International Film Festival on September 18, 2025, 47-48, and as a headline gala of the 69th BFI London Film Festival on October 13, 2025, 49. For its Mexican premiere, it screened at the Morelia International Film Festival. 50. The film was released in select theaters on October 17, 2025, including select screenings on 35mm and IMAX, followed by a global release on Netflix on November 7. 51. Distribution for Mexico's release in select theaters was handled by Pimienta Films. 50. Reception. Critical response. Jacob Elordi has garnered critical praise for his performance as the creature, with nominations for the Golden Globe Award and Critics' Choice Award for Best Supporting Actor. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 85% of 363 critics' reviews are positive. The website's consensus reads, "Finding the humanity in one of cinema's most iconic monsters, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein is a lavish epic that gets its most invigorating bolts from Jacob Elordi's standout performance." 52. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 78 out of 100, based on 58 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. 53. The film has been described as Gothic romanticism, in the vein of Del Toro's own Crimson Peak, 2015, or such films as Neil Jordan's Interview with the Vampire, 1994, and Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, 1992. 54. It has also been an immediate inspiration for a number of cultural commentaries. 55. Guillermo del Toro's lavish take on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein has divided critics along a spectrum of admiration. Alyssa Wilkinson of The New York Times, selecting the film as a critic's pick, argues that Del Toro's version wholeheartedly embraces the novel's profound debt to Paradise Lost while imprinting it with his signature style, transforming Shelley's literary skeleton into a distinctly Del Toro tale of monstrous fathers and abandoned sons that remains faithful to the core pathos of the original text. 56. This balance between fidelity and personal vision is echoed by The Hollywood Reporter's David Rooney, who describes the film as a visually sumptuous retelling that transcends horror for grand romantic tragedy, suggesting it hews closely to the novel's tragic spirit while achieving a new cinematic scale. 57. Empire Magazine's Jamie Graham awards the film 4 stars out of 5, calling it an unusually faithful rendition of Mary Shelley's novel that also functions as a boldly personal Gothic romance, stitching together Shelley's themes with Del Toro's signature fairy tale and body horror sensibilities into a sumptuous whole. 54. In a full-throated rave, Glenn Kenny of RogerEbert.com offers a perfect score, vigorously defending the adaptation's integrity, crediting Del Toro for forging something nearly new from the familiar source material by keeping philosophically faithful to Mary Shelley's novel, even as he smartly transposes its core to a more fantastical Victorian setting, thereby expanding the humanity found in the classic story. 58. A more cautious perspective comes from The Guardian's Peter Bradshaw, who, while granting the film 3 stars out of 5 and admiring its narrative shift to the creature's perspective, a key element of Shelley's multi-voice novel, contends that its luxurious, cod-period reverence for a Victorian aesthetic ultimately sanitizes the tale's raw, philosophical horror, steering clear of the transgressive energy he finds in other interpretations. 59. This critique of adaptation choices is sharpened by Ava Elizabeth Jenkins at The Daily Tar Heel, who, in a mixed assessment, argues that specific character alterations from Shelley's blueprint, such as aging up Victor Frankenstein and reconfiguring Elizabeth's role, ultimately undermine the source material's emotional weight, rendering key moments from the novel feeling unearned in what she still calls a beautifully horrific interpretation. 60. Similarly, Peter DeBruge of Variety notes that while Del Toro's vision hews closer to Mary Shelley's intentions than most prior film adaptations, particularly in its empathetic exploration of creation and purpose, it ultimately buckles under its own weight, its structural choices and epic runtime diluting the novel's concentrated philosophical power. 61. The consensus frames Del Toro's Frankenstein as a sweeping Gothic romance that prioritizes the novel's spiritual core over literal fidelity. A Gothic film is a film that is based on Gothic fiction or common elements from such fictional works. Since various definite film genres, including science fiction, film noir, thriller, and comedy, have used Gothic elements, the Gothic film is challenging to define clearly as a genre. Gothic elements have especially infused the horror film genre, contributing supernatural and nightmarish elements. 1. To create a Gothic atmosphere, filmmakers have sought to create new camera tricks that challenge audiences' perceptions. Gothic films also reflected contemporary issues. A new companion to the Gothic's Heidi K said strong visuals, a focus on sexuality, and an emphasis on audience response characterize Gothic films like they did the literary works. 2. The Encyclopedia of the Gothic said the foundation of Gothic film was the combination of Gothic literature, stage melodrama, and German Expressionism. 3. In the Cambridge Companion to Gothic Fiction, Misha Kafka says Gothic film is not an established genre, rather contributing Gothic images, plots, characters, and styles to films. These elements are often found in the broader category of horror. Kafka quotes William Patrick Day's definition of the Gothic: "It tantalizes us with fear, both as its subject and its effect. It does so, however, not primarily through characters or plots or even language, but through spectacle." Cinema suits the Gothic definition in creating images that establish the spectacle. According to New Directions in 21st Century Gothic, The Gothic Compass, scholars consider the Gothic films Frankenstein, 1931, by James Whale, Dracula, 1931, by Todd Browning, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1931, by Ruben Mamoulian, a foundational triptych, from which they in turn look back to earlier Gothic films and forward to later ones. 7. In 1975, director Nicholas Raeg expressed concern about the modern perception of Gothic cinema, noting that it became associated with camp, whereas he believed the Gothic was a serious cultural influence, not a subject of humor. Guillermo del Toro Gómez, Spanish, Guillermo el Toro, born October 9, 1964, is a Mexican filmmaker, author, and artist. His work has been characterized by a strong connection to fairy tales, Gothicism, and horror, often blending the genres, with an effort to infuse visual or poetic beauty in the grotesque. 1. He has had a lifelong fascination with monsters, which he considers symbols of great power. 2. He is known for pioneering dark fantasy in the film industry and for his use of insectal and religious imagery, his themes of Catholicism, celebrating imperfection, underworld motifs, practical special effects, and dominant amber lighting. 3, 4, 5. Throughout his career, Del Toro has shifted between Spanish-language films such as Cronos, 1993, The Devil's Backbone, 2001, and Pan's Labyrinth, 2006, and English-language films, including Mimic, 1997, Blade 2, 2002, Hellboy, 2004, and its sequel Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, 2008, Pacific Rim, 2013, Crimson Peak, 2015, The Shape of Water, 2017, Nightmare Alley, 2021, Pinocchio, 2022, and Frankenstein, 2025. As a producer or writer, he has worked on the films The Orphanage, 2007, Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, 2010, The Hobbit film series, 2012 to 2014, Mama, 2013, The Book of Life, 2014, Pacific Rim, Uprising, 2018, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, 2019, and The Witches, 2020. In 2022, he created the Netflix anthology horror series Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, featuring a collection of classical horror stories. With Chuck Hogan, he co-authored the Strain trilogy of novels, 2009 to 2011, later adapted into a comic book series, 2011 to 15, and a live-action television series, 2014 to 17. With DreamWorks Animation and Netflix, he created the animated franchise Tales of Arcadia, which includes the series Trollhunters, 2016 to 18, Three Below, 2018 to 19, and Wizards, 2020. And the sequel film Trollhunters, Rise of the Titans, 2021. Del Toro is close friends with fellow Mexican filmmakers Alfonso Cuarón and Alejandro G. Iñárritu, and they are collectively known as the Three Amigos of Mexican cinema. 6. He has received several awards including 3 Academy Awards, 3 BAFTA Awards, 2 Golden Globe Awards, a Daytime Emmy Award, and a Golden Lion. He was included in Time magazine's list of the 100 most influential people in the world in 2018. 7. And received a Motion Picture Star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2019. 8. In 1997, at the age of 33, Guillermo was given a $30 million budget from Miramax Films, then owned by Disney, to shoot another film, Mimic. He was ultimately unhappy with the way Miramax treated him during production, which led to his friend James Cameron almost coming to blows with Miramax co-founder and owner Harvey Weinstein during the 70th Academy Awards. 23. I cannot pontificate about it, but by the time I'm done, I will have done one movie, and it's all the movies I want. People say, I like your Spanish movies more than I like your English language movies because they are not as personal, and I go, fuck, you're wrong. Hellboy is as personal to me as Pan's Labyrinth. They're totally different, and yes, of course you can like one more than the other. The other one may seem banal, or whatever it is that you don't like. But it really is part of the same movie. You make one movie. Hitchcock did one movie, all his life. Guillermo del Toro, Twitch Film, 15 January 2013. 1. Del Toro views the horror genre as inherently political, explaining, much like fairy tales, there are 2 facets of horror. One is pro-institution, which is the most reprehensible type of fairy tale. Don't wander into the woods, and always obey your parents. The other type of fairy tale is completely anarchic and anti-establishment. 25. He is close friends with two other prominent and critically praised Mexican filmmakers Alfonso Cuarón and Alejandro González Iñárritu. 26. The three often influence each other's directorial decisions and have been interviewed together by Charlie Rose. Cuarón was one of the producers of Pan's Labyrinth, while Iñárritu assisted in editing the film. The three filmmakers, referred to as the Three Amigos, founded the production company Cha 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 Films, whose first release was 2008's Rudo y Cursi. 27-28. Del Toro has also contributed to the web series Trailers from Hell. 29. In April 2008, Del Toro was hired by Peter Jackson to direct the live-action film adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit. On May 30, 2010, Del Toro left the project due to extended delays brought on by MGM's financial troubles. Although he did not direct the films, he is credited as co-writer in An Unexpected Journey, The Desolation of Smaug, and The Battle of the Five Armies. 30. On December 1, 2008, Del Toro expressed interest in a stop-motion remake of Roald Dahl's novel The Witches in collaboration with Alfonso Cuarón. 31. On June 19, 2018, it was announced that Del Toro and Cuarón would instead be attached as executive producers on the remake, with Robert Zemeckis helming the project and writing. 32. Ivana Bacuro and Del Toro receive a standing ovation after the North American premiere of Pan's Labyrinth at the 2006 Toronto International Film Festival. In December 2017, Searchlight Pictures announced that Del Toro would direct a new adaptation of the 1946 novel Nightmare Alley by William Lindsay Gresham, the screenplay of which he co-wrote with his future wife Kim Morgan. 61. In 2019, it was reported that Bradley Cooper, Cate Blanchett, Toni Collette, and Rooney Mara had closed deals to star in the film, which went into production in January 2020. 62-63. It was released in December 2021 to positive reviews, but was a box office failure. The film received 4 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture. 64. In 2008, Del Toro announced he was working on a dark stop-motion film adaptation of the Italian novel The Adventures of Pinocchio, co-directed by Adam Parrish King, with the Jim Henson Company as production company, and music by Nick Cave. 65. The project had been in development for over a decade. The pre-production was begun by the studio Shadow Machine. In 2017, Del Toro announced that Patrick McHale is co-writing the script of the film. 66. In the same year, Del Toro revealed at the 74th Venice International Film Festival that the film will be reimagined during the rise of Benito Mussolini, and that he would need $35 million to make it. 67. In November 2017, it was reported that Del Toro had canceled the project because no studios were willing to finance it. 68. In October 2018, it was announced that the film had been revived, with Netflix backing the project. Netflix had previously collaborated with Del Toro on Troll Hunters. Many of the same details of the project remain the same, but with Mark Gustafson now co-directing rather than Adam Parrish King. It premiered at the BFI London Film Festival on 15 October 2022, 69, and received a theatrical release on November 9 of the same year before a scheduled release on Netflix in December. 70. The film won the Best Animated Feature at the 95th Academy Awards. In March 2023, it was confirmed that Del Toro would next direct his long-in-development Frankenstein film, now based at Netflix. 72. Speaking about the film's significance in his filmography up to that point, Del Toro said, "This movie closes the cycle. If you look at the lineage, from Kronos to The Devil's Backbone, to Pan's Labyrinth to Crimson Peak to this is an evolution of a certain type of aesthetic, and a certain type of rhythm, and a certain type of empathy. I feel like I need a change. You never know, but right now my desire is to try and do something very different." 73. The film saw a limited theatrical release starting on October 17, 2025, with Oscar Isaac and Jacob Elordi as Victor Frankenstein and the Creature, respectively. Upcoming. Announced in February 2023, Del Toro will re-team with Netflix and Shadow Machine on the stop-motion film The Buried Giant, 74. At the 2023 Annecy International Animation Film Festival, he said he planned to leave live-action films and just do animation. There are a couple more live-action movies I want to do, but not many. After that, I only want to do animation. That's the plan. He also expressed frustration over the fact that 5 of his projects were turned down by studios in just 2 months, 75. Personal life. Family and residences. Del Toro met and began dating Lorenza Newton, cousin of singer Guadalupe Pineda, when they were both studying at the Instituto de Ciencias in Guadalajara. They were married in 1986 and had 2 daughters together, 76, before divorcing in September 2017, 77. In 2021, he married Kim Morgan, an American film historian who was formerly married to Canadian filmmaker Guy Maddin, 78. Del Toro maintains homes in Toronto and Los Angeles and returns to his native Guadalajara every 6 weeks to visit his family, 79. He also owns 2 houses devoted exclusively to his collection of books, poster artwork, and other belongings pertaining to his work. He explained, "As a kid, I dreamed of having a house with secret passages and a room where it rained 24 hours a day. The point of being over 40 is to fulfill the desires you've been harboring since you were 7. 25. Views. In a 2007 interview, Del Toro described his political position as a little too liberal. He pointed out that the villains in most of his films, such as the industrialist in Kronos, the Nazis in Hellboy, and the Francoists in Pan's Labyrinth, are united by the common attribute of authoritarianism. I hate structure. I'm completely anti-structural in terms of believing in institutions. I hate them. I hate any institutionalized social, religious, or economic thing." 80. In 2009, Del Toro signed a petition in support of director Roman Polanski after Polanski was detained while traveling to a Switzerland film festival in relation to his 1977 charges of drugging and raping a 13-year-old girl. The petition argued the arrest would undermine the tradition of film festivals as a place for works to be shown freely and safely, and that arresting filmmakers traveling to neutral countries could open the door for actions of which no one can know the effects. 81-82. Raised Catholic, Del Toro told Charlie Rose in a 2009 interview that his upbringing was excessively morbid, and said, "I mercifully lapsed as a Catholic, but as Buñuel used to say, I'm an atheist, thank God." He insists that he is spiritually not with Buñuel, and that he is once a Catholic, always a Catholic, in a way. He concluded, "I believe in man. I believe in mankind, as the worst and the best that has happened to this world." 83. He has also responded to the claim that he views his art as his religion. "It is. To me, art and storytelling serve primal, spiritual functions in my daily life. Whether I'm telling a bedtime story to my kids or trying to mount a movie or write a short story or a novel, I take it very seriously." 25. Nevertheless, he became a raging atheist after seeing a pile of human fetuses while volunteering at a Mexican hospital. 84. He also said that he was horrified by the way the Catholic Church complied with Francoist Spain, and even had a character in one of his films quote what actual priests would say to Republican faction members in concentration camps. 85. Upon discovering the religious beliefs of English writer C.S. Lewis, Del Toro stated that he could no longer relate to Lewis and his work, despite having done so beforehand. 86. He described Lewis as too Catholic for him, despite the fact that Lewis was never a Catholic. 87. Del Toro is not entirely disparaging of Catholicism, and his background continues to influence his work. While discussing The Shape of Water, he mentioned the Catholic influence on the film. "A very Catholic notion is the humble force, or the force of humility, that gets revealed as a godlike figure toward the end. It's also used in fairy tales. In fairy tales, in fact, there is an entire strand of tales that would be encompassed by the title, The Magical Fish. And it's not exactly a secret that a fish is a Christian symbol." In the same interview, he said, "I don't think there is life beyond death, I don't. But I do believe that we get this clarity in the last minute of our life. The titles we achieved, the honors we managed, they all vanish. You are left alone with you and your deeds and the things you didn't do. And that moment of clarity gives you either peace or the most tremendous fear, because you finally have no cover and you finally realize exactly who you are. 88. In an interview for his book and exhibition Guillermo del Toro at Home with Monsters, Del Toro stated in 2016, "A lot of Mexican Catholic dogma, the way it's taught, it's about existing in a state of grace, which I found impossible to reconcile with the much darker view of the world and myself, even as a child. I couldn't make sense of impulses like rage or envy and, when I was older, more complex ones, you know. I felt there was a deep cleansing allowing for imperfection through the figure of a monster. Monsters are the patron saints of imperfection." 89. Del Toro is highly skeptical of AI in filmmaking, telling the British Film Institute in September 2024, "I saw a demo of AI being used for animation, and I thought, oh, that's what people think animation is. Giving prompts and the computer does it. AI has demonstrated that it can do semi-compelling screensavers, that's essentially that. And I think the value of art is not how much it costs and how little effort it requires, it's how much you would risk to be in its presence. Are screensavers going to make viewers cry because they lost a son, a mother? Because they misspent their youth? No, AI is in the hands of people that don't think about it as a tool but as a solution. It should be, if at all, optional." 90. In an interview with NPR's Fresh Air, Del Toro again expressed disinterest and skepticism in generative AI in films, saying the other day, "Somebody wrote me an email, said, 'What is your stance on AI?' And my answer was very short. I said I'd rather die." 91. Interests. While studying at university, Del Toro published his first book when he wrote a biography of English filmmaker Alfred Hitchcock, whom he has long praised and admired. 92. In 2010, Del Toro revealed that he was a fan of video games, describing them as the comic books of our time and a medium that gains no respect among the intelligentsia. He referred to the video games ICO and Shadow of the Colossus as masterpieces. 93. He later cited asteroids, cosmology of Kyoto, gadget, invention, travel and adventure, and Galaga as his personal favorite games. 94. Del Toro's favorite film monsters are Frankenstein's monster, the xenomorph, Gill-Man, Godzilla, and The Thing. 95. Frankenstein in particular has a special meaning for him, in both film and literature, as he claims he has a Frankenstein fetish to a degree that is unhealthy. He said, "It's the most important book of my life, so you know if I get to it, whenever I get to it, it will be the right way." 96. He usually watches 3 films a day. 97. And lists Brazil, Nosferatu, Freaks, and Bram Stoker's Dracula among his favorite horrors. 98. 99. Del Toro is also a fan of Japanese manga and anime, having called the anime Doraemon the greatest kids series ever created. 100. He has cited Hayao Miyazaki as one of his influences and one of his favorite storytellers in any medium, having identified with his style and influence through his Toei animation and Studio Ghibli projects like The Wonderful World of Puss in Boots, Heidi, Girl of the Alps, My Neighbor Totoro, and The Boy and the Heron from childhood to adulthood, praising how he evokes the emotion of recognizing an impossible beauty only existing in films and realistically depicting brutal themes that affect the best and the worst of humanity, deeming Miyazaki an entirely genuine one-of-a-kind creator who exists fully in his art. 101. Del Toro is highly interested in the culture of Victorian England. He said, "I have a room of my library at home called the Dickens Room. It has every work by Charles Dickens, Wilkie Collins, and many other Victorian novelists, plus hundreds of works about Victorian London and its customs, etiquette, architecture. I'm a Jack the Ripper aficionado, too. My museum/home has a huge amount of ripperology in it." 102. In 2019, Del Toro paid for the flights of the Mexican teams to attend the 60th International Mathematical Olympiad, IMO, in South Africa and the United Kingdom. After the Mexican chapter of the IMO announced the government had suspended financing for the youngsters. 103. 104. Del Toro has an honorary doctorate from the National Autonomous University of Mexico, UNAM. In November 2022, UNAM awarded him the honoris causa doctorate for his contributions to culture and his support for the youth. 105. Father's 1997 kidnapping. Del Toro's father, Federico Del Toro Torres, was kidnapped in Guadalajara around 1997. Del Toro's family had to pay twice the amount originally asked for as a ransom, $1 million. Immediately after learning of the kidnapping, fellow filmmaker James Cameron, a friend of Del Toro since they met after the production of Cronos, offered to help Del Toro by paying for a negotiator, $250,000, which Del Toro accepted, before reimbursing him later. 106. 107. 72 days after Federico was kidnapped, the ransom was paid and he was released. The culprits were never apprehended, nor was the money ever recovered. 108. The event prompted Del Toro, his parents, and his siblings to move abroad. In a 2008 interview with Time magazine, he mentioned the kidnapping of his father. Every day, every week, something happens that reminds me that I am in involuntary exile from my country. Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus, is an 1818 Gothic novel, written by English author Mary Shelley. Frankenstein tells the story of Victor Frankenstein, a young scientist who creates a sapient creature from different body parts in an unorthodox scientific experiment. Shelley started writing the story when she was 18 and staying in Bath, too, and the first edition was published anonymously in London on January 1, 1818, when she was 20. Her name first appeared in the second edition, which was published in Paris in 1821. Shelley traveled through Europe in 1815, moving along the River Rhine in Germany, and stopping in Jernschien, 17 kilometers, 11 miles, away from Frankenstein Castle, where, about a century earlier, Johann Conrad Dippel, an alchemist, had engaged in experiments. 345. She then journeyed to the region of Geneva, Switzerland, where much of the story takes place. Galvanism and occult ideas were topics of conversation for her companions, particularly for her lover and future husband Percy Bysshe Shelley. In 1816, at the suggestion of Lord Byron, Mary, Percy, John Polidori, and Byron himself, each agreed to try writing a ghost story. 6. After thinking for days, Shelley was inspired to write Frankenstein after imagining a scientist who created life and was horrified by what he had made. 7. The novel was first published anonymously in 1818, and in 1831, a revised edition was published under Mary Shelley's name. This version included significant stylistic revisions, a new preface describing the story's conception, and a more explicitly moral tone. 8. Frankenstein is one of the best-known works of English literature. Infused with elements of the Gothic novel and the Romantic movement, it has had a considerable influence on literature and on popular culture, spawning a complete genre of horror stories, films, and plays. Since the publication of the novel, the name Frankenstein has often been used to refer to the monster. 9, 10, 11. Plot summary. This is a linear summary of the events of the novel, which opens from Robert Walton's perspective before switching to Victor's retelling, and then the creature's story. Victor Frankenstein, born in Naples to an upper-class Genovese family, spends his youth obsessed with alchemy. As he grows older, he develops an interest in modern sciences, such as chemistry and electricity. After his mother Caroline dies of scarlet fever, Victor leaves home to attend the University of Ingolstadt. Through his studies, Victor discovers a new way to create life, assembling human body parts stolen from charnel houses and fresh graves, which he uses to create a large and grotesque humanoid creature. When the creature awakens, Victor is repelled by it and flees in terror, returning the next day to find the creature gone. The newly conscious creature runs away, discovers fire, and learns to avoid humans, who find him frightening. He finds a hovel attached to a small house, which lets him observe a family while remaining unseen. As the family teaches their language to a foreigner, the creature also learns to speak and write. He also finds a collection of books, including Paradise Lost, and learns to read. He reads some papers that had been in the clothes he had taken from Ingolstadt, through which he learns the truth of his origin and the identity of his creator. He finally reveals himself to the family's blind father while he is alone, who treats him with kindness. When the rest of the family return, however, they are horrified by his appearance and chase him away. The creature then saves a young girl from drowning, only to be shot by her father, who had misunderstood and thought the creature had attacked her. Embittered by humanity, the creature travels to Geneva to confront his creator. Upon arrival, he encounters Victor's younger brother, William. Realizing that William belongs to the same family, the creature kills him, then frames the family servant Justine for his death. Victor suspects his creature was responsible, but does not intervene while Justine is tried and executed. Later, while hiking on Mer de Glace, Victor once more encounters the creature. The creature relays a story and asks Victor to create a female companion, which he believes will be his only chance at happiness. Victor consents to this. "Oh, Frankenstein, be not equitable to every other, and trample upon me alone, to whom thy justice, and even thy clemency and affection, is most due. Remember, that I am thy creature. I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel, whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed. Everywhere I see bliss, from which I alone am irrevocably excluded. I was benevolent and good, misery made me a fiend. Make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous." The creature asks Victor Frankenstein to create a female companion. Victor and his friend Henry Clerval leave the European mainland for Britain, where Victor establishes a laboratory in Orkney. While working on the female creature, Victor imagines his creations giving birth, and fearfully decides to destroy the incomplete female. The original creature issues a warning that he will meet Victor on his wedding night and murders Henry in an act of revenge. Victor suffers a mental breakdown, then returns home. Back in Geneva, Victor marries Elisabeth Lavenza, a childhood friend born in Italy. Fulfilling his threat, the creature murders her on the wedding night. Days later, Victor's father Alphonse dies of grief. With no remaining family, besides his other brother Ernest, Victor vows revenge and pursues the creature, eventually following him to the Arctic. Chasing the creature across Arctic ice, Victor nearly dies from exhaustion and hypothermia, but is rescued by Captain Robert Walton, who is leading an expedition to the North Pole. Victor recounts his story to Walton and encourages the crew to continue their expedition. Instead, they decide to abandon their journey and turn back. Victor vows that he will go on chasing the creature, but in his weakened state, he dies aboard the ship. As the ship leaves the Arctic, the creature comes on board. He mourns Victor's death, tells Walton he plans to burn himself on a pyre, and departs. Author's background. Mary Shelley by Richard Rothwell, 1840-41. Mary Shelley's mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, died from infection 11 days after giving birth to her. Shelley grew close to her father, William Godwin. Godwin hired a nurse, who briefly cared for her and her half-sister, before marrying his second wife, Mary Jane Clairmont, who did not like the close bond between Shelley and her father. The resulting friction caused Godwin to favor his other children. Shelley's father was a famous author of the time, and her education was of great importance to him, although it was not formal. Shelley grew up surrounded by her father's friends, writers, and persons of political importance, who often gathered at the family home. This inspired her authorship at an early age. Mary, at the age of 16, met Percy Bysshe Shelley, who later became her husband, while he was visiting her father. Godwin disapproved of the relationship between his daughter and an older, married man, so they fled to France along with her stepsister, Claire Clairmont. On February 22, 1815, Shelley gave birth prematurely to her first child, Clara, who died 2 weeks later, 12. In the summer of 1816, Mary, Percy, and Claire took a trip to visit Claire's lover, Lord Byron, in Geneva. Poor weather conditions, more akin to winter, forced Byron and the visitors to stay indoors. Byron suggested that he, Mary, Percy, and Byron's physician, John Polidori, each try writing a ghost story. 13. Mary was 20 years old when her novel Frankenstein was published. 14. 15. Literary influences. Shelley's work was heavily influenced by that of her parents. Her father was famous for his 1793 book Inquiry Concerning Political Justice, and her mother famous for the 1792 essay A Vindication of the Rights of Woman. Her father's novels also influenced her writing of Frankenstein. These novels included Things as They Are, or The Adventures of Caleb Williams, 1794, St. Leon, and Fleetwood. All of these books were set in Switzerland, similar to the setting in Frankenstein. Some major themes of social affections and the renewal of life that appear in Shelley's novel stem from these works she had in her possession. Other literary influences that appear in Frankenstein are Pygmalion et Galatea by Madame de Genlis and Ovid, with the use of individuals identifying the problems with society. 16. Ovid also inspires the use of Prometheus in the book's subtitle. 17. The influence of John Milton's Paradise Lost and Samuel Taylor Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner are evident in the novel. In The Frankenstein of the French Revolution, author Julia Douthwaite posits that Shelley probably acquired some ideas for Frankenstein's character from Humphrey Davy's book Elements of Chemical Philosophy, in which he had written that science has bestowed upon man powers which may be called creative, which have enabled him to change and modify the beings around him. References to the French Revolution run through the novel. A possible source is François-Félix Nogaret's Le Miroir de Événements Actuels, Ou la Belle plus Offrant, 1790. A political parable about scientific progress featuring an inventor named Wakwickbaukenson Frankenstein, 18, then abridged as Frankenstein, who creates a life-sized automaton. 19. However, there is no evidence Shelley had read it. 20. Both Frankenstein and the monster quote passages from Percy Shelley's 1816 poem, Mutability, and its theme of the role of the subconscious is discussed in prose. Percy Shelley's name never appears as the author of the poem, although the novel credits other quoted poets by name. Coleridge's poem The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, 1798, is associated with the theme of guilt, and William Wordsworth's Tintern Abbey, 1798, with that of innocence. Many writers and historians have attempted to associate several then popular natural philosophers, now called physical scientists, with Shelley's work because of several notable similarities. Two of the most noted natural philosophers among Shelley's contemporaries were Italian Giovanni Aldini, who made many public attempts at human reanimation through bioelectric galvanism in London, 21, and Johann Conrad Dippel, who was supposed to have developed chemical means to extend the lifespan of humans. While Shelley was aware of both of these men and their activities, she makes no mention of or reference to them, or their experiments in any of her published or released notes. Ideas about life and death discussed by Percy and Byron were of great interest to scientists of the time. They drew on the theories of Erasmus Darwin and the experiments of Luigi Galvani, as well as the work of James Lind. 22. Mary joined these conversations, and the ideas of Darwin, Galvani, and perhaps Lind are reflected in her novel. Shelley's personal experiences also influence the themes within Frankenstein. The themes of loss, guilt, and the consequences of defying nature present in the novel all developed from Mary Shelley's own life. The loss of her mother, the relationship with her father, and the death of her first child are thought to have inspired the monster and his separation from parental guidance. In a 1965 issue of the Journal of Religion and Health, a psychologist proposed that the theme of guilt stemmed from her not feeling good enough for Percy because of the loss of their child. 15. Composition. Draft of Frankenstein. It was on a dreary night of November that I beheld my man completed. During the rainy summer of 1816, the year without a summer, the world was locked in a long, cold volcanic winter caused by the eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815. 23-24, Mary Shelley, aged 18, and her lover, and future husband, Percy Bysshe Shelley, visited Lord Byron at the Villa Diodati by Lake Geneva, in the Swiss Alps. The weather was too cold and dreary that summer to enjoy the outdoor holiday activities they had planned, so the group retired indoors until dawn. Sitting around a log fire at Byron's villa, the company amused themselves by reading German ghost stories translated into French from the book Phantasmagoriana. 25. Byron proposed that they each write a ghost story. 26. Unable to think of a story, Mary Shelley became anxious. She recalled being asked, "Have you thought of a story?" each morning, and every time being forced to reply with a mortifying negative. 27. During one evening in the middle of summer, the discussions turned to the nature of the principle of life. Perhaps a corpse would be reanimated, Mary noted. Galvanism had given token of such things. 28. It was after midnight before they retired and, unable to sleep, she became possessed by her imagination as she beheld the grim terrors of her waking dream. 7. I saw the pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together. I saw the hideous phantasm of a man stretched out and then, on the working of some powerful engine, show signs of life, and stir with an uneasy, half-vital motion. Frightful must it be, for supremely frightful would be the effect of any human endeavor to mock the stupendous mechanism of the creator of the world. 29. In September 2011, astronomer Donald Olson, after a visit to the Lake Geneva villa in the previous year and inspecting data about the motion of the moon and stars, concluded that her waking dream took place between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. on June 16, 1816, several days after the initial idea by Lord Byron that they each write a ghost story. 30. Mary Shelley's House of Frankenstein, a museum dedicated to the life of Shelley and her novel, at 37, Gay Street, Bath, the city where she wrote the book. Mary Shelley began writing what she assumed would be a short story, but with Percy Shelley's encouragement, she expanded the tale into a fully fledged novel. 31. She later described that summer in Switzerland as the moment when I first stepped out from childhood into life. 32. Shelley wrote the first 4 chapters in the weeks following the suicide of her half-sister Fanny. 33. This was one of many personal tragedies that impacted Shelley's work. Shelley's first child died in infancy, and when she began composing Frankenstein in 1816, she was probably nursing her second child, who was also dead by the time of Frankenstein's publication. 34. Shelley wrote much of the book while residing in a lodging house in the center of Bath, England in 1816. 35. According to The Guardian, by all accounts, Shelley came to Bath to hide. Yet, she found deep wells of inspiration while living in the shadow of the city's Gothic abbey, particularly among Bath's medical community. Significantly, she was a contemporary of Dr. Charles Wilkinson, a pioneer of medical electricity, and attended lectures at his laboratory around the corner from her lodgings when she was writing about Victor Frankenstein breaking taboos by using galvanism to shock life into a creature stitched together from dead body parts. 36. Byron managed to write just a fragment based on the vampire legends he heard while traveling the Balkans, and from this John Polidori created the vampire, 1819, the progenitor of the romantic vampire literary genre. Thus, 2 seminal horror tales originated from the conclave, 37, 38, 39. The group talked about Enlightenment and counter-Enlightenment ideas as well. Mary Shelley believed the Enlightenment idea that society could progress and grow if political leaders used their powers responsibly. However, she also believed the Romantic ideal that misused power could destroy society. 40. Origin of Victor Frankenstein's name. Mary Shelley maintained that she derived the name Frankenstein from a dream vision. This claim has since been disputed and debated by scholars that have suggested alternative sources for Shelley's inspiration. 53. The German name Frankenstein means stone of the Franks and is associated with various places in Germany, including Frankenstein Castle, Burg Frankenstein, in Darmstadt, Hesse, and Frankenstein Castle in Frankenstein, a village in the Palatinate. 54. There is also a castle called Frankenstein in Bad Salzungen, Thuringia, and a municipality called Frankenstein in Saxony. The town of Frankenstein in Silesia, now Zapkowicz, Poland, was the site of a scandal involving gravediggers in 1606, and this has been suggested as an inspiration to the author. 55. Finally, the name is borne by the aristocratic house of Frankenstein from Franconia. Radu Florescu argued that Mary and Percy Shelley visited Frankenstein Castle near Darmstadt in 1814, where alchemist Johann Conrad Dippel had experimented with human bodies, and reasoned that Mary suppressed mention of her visit to maintain her public claim of originality. 56. A literary essay by A.J. Day supports Florescu's position that Mary Shelley knew of and visited Frankenstein Castle before writing her debut novel. 57. Day includes details of an alleged description of the Frankenstein Castle in Mary Shelley's Lost Journals. However, according to Georg Helene, Day's and Florescu's claims cannot be verified. 58. A possible interpretation of the name Victor is derived from Paradise Lost by John Milton, a great influence on Shelley. A quotation from Paradise Lost is on the opening page of Frankenstein, and Shelley writes that the monster reads it in the novel. 59. 60. Milton frequently refers to God as the Victor in Paradise Lost, and Victor's creation of life in the novel is compared to God's creation of life in Paradise Lost. In addition, Shelley's portrayal of the monster owes much to the character of Satan in Paradise Lost, and the monster says in the story, after reading the epic poem, that he empathizes with Satan's role. Parallels between Victor Frankenstein and Mary's husband, Percy Shelley, have also been drawn. Percy Shelley was the firstborn son of Member of Parliament Timothy Shelley, a country squire with strong political connections, and grandson of Sir Bysshe Shelley, 1st Baronet of Castle Goring. 61. Similarly, Victor's family is one of the most distinguished of that republic, and his ancestors were councillors and syndics. Percy's sister and Victor's adopted sister were both named Elizabeth. There are many other similarities, from Percy's usage of Victor as a pen name for original poetry by Victor and Kazire, a collection of poetry he wrote with Elizabeth, 62, to Percy's days at Eton, where he had experimented with electricity and magnetism as well as with gunpowder and numerous chemical reactions, and the way in which Percy's rooms at Oxford were filled with scientific equipment. Jacob Elordi, born June 26, 1997, is an Australian actor. 1. He rose to prominence with his role as Noah Flynn in Netflix's The Kissing Booth franchise, 2018 to 2021. And earned critical acclaim for his portrayal of Neat Jacobs in the HBO drama series Euphoria, 2019, present. In 2023, Elordi portrayed Elvis Presley in Sofia Coppola's biographical drama Priscilla. He received a nomination for the BAFTA Award for Best Actor in a Supporting Role for his role in Emerald Fennell's black comedy thriller Saltburn, 2023. Elordi garnered further acclaim for his performances in the war drama miniseries The Narrow Road to the Deep North and as the creature in Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, both 2025, with each earning him Golden Globe Award nominations. Elordi's first experience on a Hollywood film set was in 2017's Pirates of the Caribbean. Dead Men Tell No Tales as an extra, 7, reportedly as one of the Redcoats, 17, 18. His first acting role was on the Australian film Swinging Safari in 2018, playing the role of Rooster, 19. Elordi starred in the Netflix romantic comedy film The Kissing Booth, which premiered in May 2018, as Noah Flynn, a bad boy jock and the film's primary love interest. 20. Despite largely negative critical reception, the film became one of Netflix's most watched titles in 2018 and brought Elordi to widespread fame. 21. 22. Elordi reprised the role in the sequels The Kissing Booth 2, which filmed in mid-2019 in Cape Town and was released in July 2020, and The Kissing Booth 3, which was released on Netflix in August 2021. 2023. 24. In a 2023 interview for GQ, he stated that he had not wanted to make them, calling them ridiculous, and stating that he did them to do whatever the fuck he had to do to become an actor in the United States. 25. 26. He also spoke out against his objectification as a result of the films. 27. After filming was completed for the first Kissing Booth film, Elordi moved to Los Angeles. He helped a friend of his film an audition for a role in Sam Levinson's HBO drama series Euphoria, of a remake of the Israeli series of the same name. While occasionally sleeping in his car and couch surfing at friends' houses with little money left and his visa expiring soon, he auditioned for Euphoria himself, with plans for it to be his last audition before moving back home. 28-21-12-3. He was then selected to play Nate Jacobs, a troubled high school football player with an abusive father, whom he portrayed from the show's pilot episode in 2019. 2-29. Elordi described the character as a narcissist and a sociopath, while Clay, skipper of British GQ, referred to the character as an antihero. 11-3. The role was described by Manya Suchdeva of The Guardian as an impressive career pivot for Elordi, and Samantha Bergeson of IndieWire called it his breakout role. 30. Elordi in 2025 at the 75th Berlin International Film Festival. He next portrayed a controlling Elvis Presley in the Sofia Coppola directed Priscilla Presley biopic Priscilla, which is based on Priscilla's memoir Elvis and Me. 44. Coppola chose Elordi to play the role partially because of his effect on women during their first meeting, which she found comparable to Elvis's. 8. Priscilla premiered at the 80th Venice International Film Festival, where it was met with positive reception. 45. Gabriella Filita of Pink News stated that Elordi achieved countless words of praise for his rendition of the king from critics. 46. His performance was often compared by critics to that of Austin Butler in Elvis. 2022. 47, 48, 49. Richard Lawson of Vanity Fair wrote that Elordi carefully calibrates Elvis's appeal and his pill-addled, domineering presence, his exacting demands and storms of frightening anger, in a more enlightening take on the man than the one seen in Elvis. 48. In his final release of 2023, Elordi starred in Emerald Fennell's psychological drama Saltburn as Felix Catton, a wealthy and charismatic British Oxford University student. 50, 51, 52. Critics from Empire, The Detroit News, and the Chicago Sun-Times described it as a star-making role for Elordi. 53, 54, 55. While Nicholas Barber of BBC News described him in the film as a revelation. And Marshall Schaefer of Slant wrote that his performance was the secret weapon of Saltburn. 56, 57. For the role, he earned a nomination for the BAFTA Award for Best Actor in a Supporting Role. 58. In 2024, Elordi hosted an episode of Saturday Night Live. 59. The episode received mostly negative critical reception for what critics found to be a heavy reliance on jokes about Elordi's attractiveness. 60, 61. Elordi starred in O Canada, a drama film directed by Paul Schrader, in which he played the younger version of Richard Gere's character, an aging documentary filmmaker reminiscing on his life. 8. Critics noted the lack of resemblance between Elordi and Gere, particularly due to Elordi being about half a foot taller than Gere. 62. His second film role that year was in On Swift Horses, a period drama about LGBTQ relationships, in which he starred as Julius, a gambler who falls in love with another man in 1950s Las Vegas. 63. He received acclaim for his work in the film from critics, including Robert Daniels of Screen Daily, who described it as an electrifying performance, 64, and Jourdain Searles of The Hollywood Reporter, who said that Elordi gives his best performance yet as Julius, showing his more sensitive, vulnerable side on the big screen for perhaps the first time. 65. In 2025, Elordi played the lead role of Dorigo Evans in a miniseries adaptation of the novel The Narrow Road to the Deep North. He next played the creature, also known as Frankenstein's monster, in the Netflix horror film Frankenstein, directed by Guillermo del Toro. The film had its world premiere at the 82nd Venice International Film Festival, 66, and was released on 24 October 2025, 67-68. RogerEbert.com considered his performance as Frankenstein's creation marvelous in conveying the monster's intelligence, sensitivity, and inherent gentleness, while the Washington Post called it transformative. 69-70. Both of these roles earned him nominations at the 83rd Golden Globe Awards for Best Actor in a Miniseries or Television Film and Best Supporting Actor in a Motion Picture. In February 2024, Joshua Fox, a producer for the Keys 106.5 radio show The Kyle and Jackie O Show, alleged on the show that, after he asked Elordi for his bath water of a reference to his role in Saltburn, as a gift for host Jackie O, Elordi pushed him and put his hands around his neck. 86. As of February 2024, the New South Wales Police Force were investigating the allegations. Elvis Aaron Presley, January 8, 1935 to August 16, 1977, was an American singer and actor. Referred to as the King of Rock and Roll, he is widely regarded as one of the most culturally significant figures of the 20th century. Presley's energetic and sexually provocative performance style, combined with a mix of influences across color lines during a transformative era in race relations, brought both great success and initial controversy. Presley was born in Tupelo, Mississippi. His family moved to Memphis, Tennessee, when he was 13. He began his music career in 1954 at Sun Records with producer Sam Phillips, who wanted to bring the sound of African American music to a wider audience. Presley, on guitar and accompanied by lead guitarist Scotty Moore and bassist Phil Black, was a pioneer of rockabilly, an up-tempo, backbeat-driven fusion of country music and rhythm and blues. In 1955, drummer D.J. Fontana joined to complete the lineup of Presley's classic quartet, and RCA Victor acquired his contract in a deal arranged by Colonel Tom Parker, who managed him for the rest of his career. Presley's first RCA Victor single, Heartbreak Hotel, was released in January 1956 and became a #1 hit in the U.S. Within a year, RCA Victor sold 10 million Presley singles. With a series of successful television appearances and chart-topping records, Presley became the leading figure of the newly popular rock and roll, though his performing style and promotion of the then marginalized sound of African Americans led to him being widely considered a threat to the moral well-being of white American youth. 7. In November 1956, Presley made his film debut in Love Me Tender. Drafted into military service in 1958, he relaunched his recording career 2 years later with some of his most commercially successful work. Presley held few concerts and, guided by Parker, devoted much of the 1960s to making Hollywood films and soundtrack albums, most of them critically derided. Some of Presley's most famous films included Jailhouse Rock, 1957, Blue Hawaii, 1961, and Viva Las Vegas, 1964. In 1968, he returned to the stage in the acclaimed NBC television comeback special Elvis, which led to an extended Las Vegas concert residency and several highly profitable tours. In 1973, Presley gave the first concert by a solo artist to be broadcast around the world, Aloha from Hawaii. Years of substance abuse and unhealthy eating severely compromised his health, and Presley died in August 1977 at his Graceland estate at the age of 42. Presley is one of the best-selling music artists in history, having sold an estimated 500 million records worldwide. He was commercially successful in many genres, including pop, country, rock and roll, rockabilly, rhythm and blues, adult contemporary, and gospel. Presley won 3 Grammy Awards, received the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award at age 36, and has been posthumously inducted into multiple music halls of fame. He holds several records, including the Most Recording Industry Association of America, RAA, certified gold and platinum albums, the most albums charted on the Billboard 200, the most #1 albums by a solo artist on the UK Albums Chart, and the most #1 singles by any act on the UK Singles Chart. In 2018, Presley was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Life and career. 1935 to 1953, early years. Main article, Early life of Elvis Presley. Present-day photograph of a whitewashed house about 15 feet wide. 4 banistered steps in the foreground lead up to a roofed porch that holds a swing wide enough for 2. The front of the house has a door and a single-paned window. The visible side of the house, about 30 feet long, has double-paned windows. Presley's birthplace in Tupelo, Mississippi. Elvis Aaron Presley was born on January 8, 1935, in Tupelo, Mississippi, to Gladys Love, née Smith, and Vernon Presley. 9. Elvis's twin Jessie Guerin was stillborn 35 minutes earlier. 10. Presley became close to both parents, especially his mother. The family attended an Assembly of God church, where he found his initial musical inspiration. 11. Vernon moved from one odd job to the next. 12, 13, and the family often relied on neighbors and government food assistance. In 1938, they lost their home after Vernon was found guilty of altering a check and was jailed for 8 months. 11. In September 1941, Presley entered first grade at East Tupelo Consolidated, where his teachers regarded him as average. 14. His first public performance was a singing contest at the Mississippi, Alabama Fair and Dairy Show on October 3, 1945. When he was 10, he sang Old Shep and recalled placing 5th. 15. A few months later, Presley received his first guitar for his birthday. Wink with a frown. 16. 17. He received guitar lessons from 2 uncles and a pastor at the family's church. Presley recalled, "I took the guitar and I watched people and I learned to play a little bit. But I would never sing in public. I was very shy about it." 18. In September 1946, Presley entered a new school, Milam, for 6th grade. The following year, he began singing and playing his guitar at school. He was often teased as a trashy kid who played hillbilly music. 19. Presley was a devotee of Mississippi Slim's radio show. He was described as crazy about music by Slim's younger brother, one of Presley's classmates. Slim showed Presley chord techniques. 20. When his protege was 12, Slim scheduled him for 2 on-air performances. Presley was overcome by stage fright the first time, but performed the following week. 21. In November 1948, the family moved to Memphis, Tennessee. 22. Enrolled at L.C. Humes High School, Presley received a grade of C in music in 8th grade. When his music teacher said he had no aptitude for singing, he brought in his guitar and sang a recent hit, "Keep Them Cold Icy Fingers Off Me." 23. He was usually too shy to perform openly and was occasionally bullied by classmates for being a mama's boy. 24. In 1950, Presley began practicing guitar under the tutelage of Lee Denson and neighbor. They and 3 other boys, including 2 future rockabilly pioneers, brothers Dorsey and Johnny Burnett, formed a loose musical collective. 25. During his junior year, Presley began to stand out among his classmates, largely because of his appearance. He grew his sideburns and styled his hair. He would head down to Beale Street, the heart of Memphis' thriving blues scene, and admire the wild, flashy clothes at Lansky Brothers. By his senior year, he was wearing those clothes. 26. He competed in Hume's annual minstrel show in 1953, singing and playing "Till I Waltz Again with You," a recent hit for Teresa Brewer. Presley recalled that the performance did much for his reputation. "I wasn't popular in school. I failed music, only thing I ever failed. And then they entered me in this talent show. When I came on stage, I heard people kind of rumbling and whispering and so forth, 'cause nobody knew I even sang. It was amazing how popular I became in school after that." 27. Presley, who could not read music, played by ear and frequented record stores that provided jukeboxes and listening booths. He knew all of Hank Snow's songs. 28. And he loved records by other country singers such as Roy Acuff, Ernest Tubb, Ted Daffin, Jimmy Rogers, Jimmy Davis, and Bob Wills. 29. The Southern gospel singer Jake Hess, one of his favorite performers, was a significant influence on his ballad singing style. 30. 31. Presley regularly attended the monthly all-night singings downtown, where white gospel groups performed music influenced by African American spirituals. 32. Presley listened to regional radio stations such as WDA that played what were then called race records, spirituals, blues, and the modern, backbeat heavy rhythm and blues. 33. Like some of his peers, he may have attended blues venues only on nights designated for exclusively white audiences. 34. Many of his future recordings were inspired by local African American musicians, such as Arthur Crudup and Rufus Thomas. 35. 36. By the time he graduated from high school in June 1953, Presley had singled out music as his future. 37. 38. 1953 to 1956. First recordings. Sam Phillips and Son Records. See also, list of songs recorded by Elvis Presley on the Sun label. Elvis in a Tuxedo. Presley and his Sun Records promotional photograph, 1954. In August 1953, Presley checked into Memphis Recording Service, the company run by Sam Phillips before he started Sun Records. He aimed to pay for studio time to record a two-sided acetate disc, My Happiness and That's When Your Heartaches Begin. He later claimed that he intended the record as a birthday gift for his mother, or that he was merely interested in what he sounded like. Biographer Peter Guralnick argued that Presley chose Sun in the hope of being discovered. 39. In January 1954, Presley cut a second acetate at Sun, I'll Never Stand in Your Way, and It Wouldn't Be the Same Without You. But again nothing came of it. 40. Not long after, he failed an audition for a local vocal quartet, the Songfellows, 41, and another for the band of Eddie Bond, 42. That's All Right. Duration, 17 seconds. 0 to 17. Presley transformed not only the sound but the emotion of the song, turning what had been written as a lament for a lost love into a satisfied declaration of independence. 43. Problems playing this file? See Media Help. Phillips, meanwhile, was always on the lookout for someone who could bring to a broader audience the sound of the black musicians on whom Sun focused. 44. In June, he acquired a demo recording by Jimmy Sweeney of a ballad, Without You, that he thought might suit Presley. The teenage singer came by the studio but was unable to do it justice. Despite this, Phillips asked Presley to sing other numbers and was sufficiently affected by what he heard to invite two local musicians, guitarist Winfield Scotty Moore and upright bass player Bill Black, to work with Presley for a recording session. 45. The session, held the evening of July 5th, proved entirely unfruitful until late in the night. As they were about to abort and go home, Presley launched into a 1946 blues number, Arthur Crudup's That's All Right. Moore called, All of a Sudden, Elvis just started singing the song, jumping around and acting the fool, and then Bill picked up his bass and he started acting the fool, too, and I started playing with them. Phillips quickly began taping. This was the sound he had been looking for. 46. 3 days later, popular Memphis disc jockey Dewey Phillips played That's All Right on his Red, Hot, and Blue show. 47. Listener interest was such that Phillips played the record repeatedly during the remaining 2 hours of his show. Interviewing Presley on air, Phillips asked him what high school he attended to clarify his color for the many callers who had assumed that he was black. 48. During the next few days, the trio recorded a bluegrass song, Bill Monroe's Blue Moon of Kentucky, again in a distinctive style and employing a jury-rigged echo effect that Sam Phillips dubbed slap back. A single was pressed with That's All Right on the A-side and Blue Moon of Kentucky on the reverse. 49. Early live performances and RCA Victor contract. The trio played publicly for the first time at the Bon Air Club on July 17, 1954. 50. Later that month, they appeared at the Overton Park Shell, with Slim Whitman headlining. Here Elvis pioneered Rubber Legs, his signature dance movement. 51-52. A combination of a strong response to rhythm and nervousness led Presley to shake his legs as he performed. His wide-cut pants emphasized his movements, causing young women in the audience to start screaming. 53. Moore recalled, during the instrumental parts, he would back off from the mic and be playing and shaking, and the crowd would just go wild. 54. Soon after, Moore and Black left their old band to play with Presley regularly, and disc jockey/promoter Bob Neal became the trio's manager. From August through October, they played frequently at the Eagle's Nest Club, a dance venue in Memphis. When Presley played, teenagers rushed from the pool to fill the club, then left again as the House Western Swing Band resumed. 55. Presley quickly grew more confident on stage. According to Moore, his movement was a natural thing, but he was also very conscious of what got a reaction. He'd do something one time, and then he would expand on it real quick. 56. Amid these live performances, Presley returned to Sun Studio for more recording sessions. 57. Presley made what would be his only appearance on Nashville's Grand Ole Opry on October 2nd. Opry manager Jim Denny told Phillips that his singer was not bad, but did not suit the program. 58-59. Louisiana Hayride, radio commercial, and first television performances. Presley performing with Scotty Moore and Bill Black in 1956. In November 1954, Presley performed on Louisiana Hayride, the Opry's chief and more adventurous rival. The show aired on 198 radio stations in 28 states. His nervous first set drew a muted reaction. A more composed and energetic second set inspired an enthusiastic response. 60. Soon after the show, the Hayride engaged Presley for a year's worth of Saturday night appearances. Trading in his old guitar for $8, he purchased a Martin instrument for $175, equivalent to $2,000 in 2024, and his trio began playing in new locales, including Houston, Texas, and Texarkana, Arkansas. 61. Presley made his first television appearance on the KSLE TV broadcast of Louisiana Hayride. Soon after, he failed an audition for Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts on the CBS television network. By early 1955, Presley's regular Hayride appearances, constant touring, and well-received record releases had made him a regional star. 62-63. In January, Neil signed a formal management contract with Presley and brought him to the attention of Colonel Tom Parker, whom he considered the best promoter in the music business. Having successfully managed the top country star Eddie Arnold, Parker was working with a new #1 country singer, Hank Snow. Parker booked Presley on Snow's February tour. 62-63. Presley in a 1955 promotional photograph. By August, Sun had released 10 sides credited to Elvis Presley, Scotty, and Bill. The latest recordings included a drummer. Some of the songs, like That's All Right, were in what one Memphis journalist described as the R&B idiom of Negro field jazz. Others, like Blue Moon of Kentucky, were more in the country field. But there was a curious blending of the two different musics in both. 64. This blend of styles made it difficult for Presley's music to find radio airplay. According to Neil, many country music disc jockeys would not play it because Presley sounded too much like a black artist, and none of the R&B stations would touch him because he sounded too much like a hillbilly. 65. The blend came to be known as rockabilly. At the time, Presley was billed as the king of Western bop, the hillbilly cat, and the Memphis Flash. 66. Presley renewed Neil's management contract in August 1955, simultaneously appointing Parker as his special advisor. 67. The group maintained an extensive touring schedule. 68. Neil recalled, "It was almost frightening. The reaction that came to Elvis from the teenage boys. So many of them, through some sort of jealousy, would practically hate him. There were occasions in some towns in Texas when we'd have to be sure to have a police guard because somebody'd always try to take a crack at him." 69. The trio became a quartet when Hayride drummer Fontana joined as a full member. In mid-October, they played a few shows in support of Bill Haley, whose Rock Around the Clock track had been a #1 hit the previous year. Haley observed that Presley had a natural feel for rhythm and advised him to sing fewer ballads. 70. At the Country Disc Jockey Convention in early November, Presley was voted the year's most promising male artist. 71. After 3 major labels made offers of up to $25,000, Parker and Phillips struck a deal with RCA Victor on November 21 to acquire Presley's Sun contract for an unprecedented $40,000. 72. C. Presley, age 20, was legally still a minor. So his father signed the contract. 73. Parker arranged with the owners of Hill and Range Publishing, Gene and Julian Aberbach, to create 2 entities, Elvis Presley Music and Gladys Music to handle all the new material recorded by Presley. Songwriters were obliged to forego 1/3 of their customary royalties in exchange for having Presley perform their compositions. 74. By December, RCA had begun to heavily promote its new singer, and before month's end had reissued many of his Sun recordings. 77. 1956 to 1958, commercial breakout and controversy. First national TV appearances and debut album. Billboard magazine advertisement, March 10, 1956. On January 10, 1956, Presley made his first recordings for RCA Victor in Nashville. 78. Extending his by now customary backup of Moore, Black, Fontana, and hayride pianist Floyd Kramer, who had been performing at live club dates with Presley. RCA Victor enlisted guitarist Chet Atkins and 3 background singers, including Gordon Stoker of the popular Jordanaires Quartet. 79. The session produced the moody Heartbreak Hotel, released as a single on January 27. 78. Parker brought Presley to national television, booking him on CBS stage show for 6 appearances over 2 months. The program, produced in New York City, was hosted on alternate weeks by big band leaders and brothers Tommy and Jimmy Dorsey. After his first appearance on January 28, Presley stayed in town to record at RCA Victor's New York studio. The sessions yielded 8 songs, including a cover of Carl Perkins' rockabilly anthem, Blues Suede Shoes. In February, Presley's I Forgot to Remember to Forget, a Sun recording released the previous August, reached the top of the Billboard country chart. 80. Neil's contract was terminated and Parker became Presley's manager. 81. RCA Victor released Presley's self-titled debut album on March 23. Joined by 5 previously unreleased Sun recordings, its 7 recently recorded tracks included 2 country songs, a bouncy pop tune, and what would centrally define the evolving sound of rock and roll, Blues Suede Shoes. An improvement over Perkins in almost every way, according to critic Robert Hilburn, and 3 R&B numbers that had been part of Presley's stage repertoire, covers of Little Richard, Ray Charles, and The Drifters. As described by Hilburn, these were the most revealing of all. Unlike many white artists, who watered down the gritty edges of the original R&B versions of songs in the 50s, Presley reshaped them. He not only injected the tunes with his own vocal character, but also made guitar, not piano, the lead instrument in all 3 cases. 82. It became the first rock and roll album to top the Billboard chart, a position it held for 10 weeks. 78. While Presley was not an innovative guitarist like Moore or contemporary African-American rockers Bo Diddley and Chuck Berry, cultural historian Gilbert B. Rodman argued that the album's cover image of Elvis having the time of his life on stage with a guitar in his hands played a crucial role in positioning the guitar as the instrument that best captured the style and spirit of this new music. 83. Milton Berle Show and Hound Dog. Presley as Clint Reno from Love Me Tender, 1956. On April 3, Presley made the first of 2 appearances on NBC's The Milton Berle Show. His performance, on the deck of the USS Hancock in San Diego, California, prompted cheers and screams from an audience of sailors and their dates. 84. A few days later, Presley and his band were flying to Nashville, Tennessee, for a recording session when an engine died and the plane almost went down over Arkansas. 85. 12 weeks after its original release, Heartbreak Hotel became Presley's first #1 pop hit. In late April, Presley began a 2-week residency at the New Frontier Hotel and Casino on the Las Vegas Strip. 86. The shows were poorly received by the conservative, middle-aged hotel guests, like a jug of corn liquor at a champagne party. A Newsweek critic wrote, 87, amid his Vegas tenure, Presley, who had acting ambitions, signed a 7-year contract with Paramount Pictures. 88, he began a tour of the Midwest in mid-May, covering 15 cities in as many days. 89, he had attended several shows by Freddie Bell and the Bellboys in Vegas, and was struck by their cover of Hound Dog, a hit in 1953 for blues singer Big Mama Thornton by songwriters Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller. It became his new closing number. 90. After a show in La Crosse, Wisconsin, an urgent message on the letterhead of the local Catholic diocese's newspaper was sent to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. It warned that Presley is a definite danger to the security of the United States. His actions and motions were such as to rouse the sexual passions of teenaged youth. After the show, more than 1,000 teenagers tried to gang into Presley's room at the auditorium. Indications of the harm Presley did just in La Crosse were the two high school girls, whose abdomen and thigh had Presley's autograph.